Before I tell you what happened, before I open a door to a chapter of my life I still struggle to explain, pause for just a second. If you've ever stayed awake at night next to someone you love and felt completely alone, if you've ever wondered how two people can share the same bed but live in different worlds, then hit subscribe. Not because this is a story you'll want to hear twice, but because this story taught me something I wish someone had told me much earlier. Sometimes the loudest truths don't arrive with shouting. They arrive quietly, in the dark, when no one is watching. So subscribe. And let me take you back to the night everything began to crack. It was supposed to be an ordinary night. Nothing dramatic. Nothing memorable. Just another evening dissolving into routine. The kind of night you forget as soon as it ends. The house was quiet, too quiet. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of silence that hums, that presses against your chest, that reminds you something is missing. I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, leaning against the frame like I'd done so many times before. It had become a habit. Not because it was comfortable, but because it gave me a moment to prepare myself, to lower expectations, to rehearse disappointment. My wife was sitting on the edge of the bed, shoulders slightly curved forward, her phone glowing in her hands. The blue light painted her face in soft shadows, making her look distant, almost untouchable. That glow used to come from candles once, from late-night talks, from laughter that spilled into the early hours of the morning, back when we were a team, back when silence meant comfort, not distance. Now silence lived with us. It had weight. It had shape. It felt permanent, like another piece of furniture we'd stopped noticing. I cleared my throat. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just enough to remind her I existed. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. Trying not to sound like I was asking for something. Trying not to sound desperate. Even though inside, I felt all three. "Are you coming to bed?" She didn't look up. Not even for a second. "Careful," she murmured. That was always her word. Careful. Not unkind. Not harsh. Just distant. As if she was warning me not to reach too far. Not to expect too much. Not to step into a space she had quietly closed off. Then came the sentence I had begun to dread. "I'm too tired." 3 words. Only 3. But they carried the weight of weeks, maybe months. I nodded. Of course I did. I pretended it didn't bother me. Pretended it didn't sting. Pretended this wasn't slowly hollowing me out from the inside. Because it was never about physical closeness. It was about the emotional distance. The invisible wall she had built around herself. A wall I was no longer allowed to touch. I switched off the lamp and slid into bed, staying on my side like an unspoken rule we'd both accepted. The mattress didn't move. Her footsteps didn't follow. So I waited. I waited for the sound of her placing the phone down. Waited for her footsteps in the hallway. Waited for the subtle shift of the bed when she'd finally join me. That tiny moment of hope. That maybe tonight would be different. But the house stayed quiet. Her steps moved farther away, not closer. She didn't come. And lying there in the darkness, staring at the ceiling, I whispered something I hadn't allowed myself to say out loud before. How did we get here? Morning didn't bring answers. Just light filtering through the curtains, and that same hollow feeling in my chest. The kind that doesn't hurt sharply, but aches constantly. Around 9 in the morning, the doorbell rang. It was Jenna. My wife's best friend since college. If my wife was quiet fire, Jenna was electricity. Loud in the best way. Warm. Expressive. Alive. She didn't just enter a room, she filled it. She leaned against the kitchen island, scrolling through something on her phone, laughing as she showed it to my wife. And my wife laughed too. Not a polite laugh. Not a forced one. A real laugh. The kind I hadn't heard in months. And I hate to admit this, but something twisted inside me. Why was it so easy for her to laugh with someone else? Why did that version of her still exist? Just not for me. I tried to shake the thought away. Told myself I was being insecure. Petty. Unfair. But then Jenna looked up. Right at me. Our eyes met for just a second. But something passed between us. Her expression shifted. Not judgment. Not amusement. Something else. Concern mixed with curiosity. as if she noticed something I'd been trying desperately to hide. The look lingered longer than it should have, and my chest tightened in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. They went back to laughing. My wife's eyes sparkled again, that familiar brightness I almost forgot existed. And I stood there quietly, watching, wondering something that scared me more than I expected. Was the woman I loved still in there somewhere? Or had she moved on emotionally while standing right beside me? Jenna ended up staying for dinner. One bottle of wine turned into two. Cooking turned into storytelling. And somehow the air softened. For the first time in what felt like forever, my wife wasn't cold or distant or exhausted. She was present. We talked about the early days, when love felt effortless. When mistakes were funny instead of heavy. When we believed connection would always be easy. We laughed about trips where everything went wrong. About plans that fell apart, and somehow made the best memories. For a moment, it almost felt normal. But beneath the laughter, something else was happening. I noticed it slowly. Subtle things. When I spoke, Jenna listened closely. Too closely. Not flirtatious. Not inappropriate. Just attentive. When my wife looked away, Jenna's eyes softened. Not with desire, but with something stranger. Understanding. As if she saw the cracks I tried to hide. As if she knew how tired I really was. And the worst part? I didn't hate being seen. Later that night, my wife stretched and yawned dramatically. I think I'm going to head up early, she said. I'm exhausted. Those same words again. But this time they landed harder. She disappeared up the stairs. The hallway light clicked off, and her absence filled the room like an echo. Jenna stayed behind, helping me clean up. The dishwasher hummed. Glasses clinked softly. Then she poured another drink. Not for herself. For me. She handed it over and looked at me in a way that felt almost surgical. Like she was cutting through every defense I had left. She's been pulling away from you, hasn't she? I froze. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because someone finally said it out loud. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. Loneliness isn't about being alone. It's about lying next to someone every night and realizing they've already left. Jenna's words didn't echo. They settled. She's been pulling away from you, hasn't she? I didn't answer right away. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because once I said it out loud, it would become real. I took a slow sip of the drink she handed me, hoping the burn would distract me. I don't know, I lied. Or maybe I half lied. Because admitting the truth felt like admitting failure. Jenna didn't push. She just leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching me the way someone watches a storm they can already see forming. I see it, she said quietly. In the way you talk. In the way you pause before answering her. In your eyes. That word again. Eyes. You look lonely. Lonely. I'd been called many things in my life. Stubborn, quiet, responsible. But never lonely. And yet it fit too perfectly. Because loneliness isn't about empty rooms. It's about full rooms that still feel hollow. Maybe it was the wine. Maybe it was the long months of pretending I was fine. Or maybe it was the simple relief of being noticed. But something in me broke open. I told her everything. How it felt to lie next to someone who felt miles away. How conversations turned into logistics. How affection became routine instead of desire. How every "I'm too tired" slowly erased pieces of me I didn't know how to replace. I'm not angry, I said. I'm just exhausted. Exhausted from hoping. Exhausted from guessing. Exhausted from feeling invisible. Jenna didn't interrupt. She didn't offer advice. She didn't defend my wife. She just listened. And that, somehow, hurt the most. When I finally stopped talking, the kitchen felt smaller. The air heavier. You deserve to be seen, she said softly. The words landed gently, but the impact was massive. Because no one had said that to me in a long time. Not even the person who promised to always see me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Jenna leaned back slightly and said something that froze time. I'm not tired. There was no seduction in her voice. No imbitasyon. Just truth. Raw. Unfiltered. Dangerous. She didn't move closer. Didn't touch me. She just looked at me. As if offering a door I could either walk through or close forever. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure she could hear it. Upstairs was my wife. The woman I married. The woman I still loved, despite everything. And sitting across from me was someone who, in a single evening, noticed everything my wife hadn't in months. I didn't move. Not forward. Not backward. I stayed still, suspended in the most dangerous silence of my life. Jenna looked away first. I shouldn't have said that, she whispered. She grabbed her purse, stood up quickly and headed for the door. Before leaving, she turned back. You deserve more than what she's giving you, she said. Don't forget that. Then she was gone. The door closed. And the house felt heavier than it ever had. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every look. Not because I wanted Jenna, but because she showed me something I could no longer ignore. I wasn't missing intimacy. I was missing connection. The next morning, I watched my wife move around the kitchen like a stranger in a familiar place. And for the first time, instead of shrinking, I spoke. I feel alone, I said. She stopped. Actually stopped. She looked at me, not through me, and something in her face cracked. She admitted she'd been drowning too. Overwhelmed. Numb. Disconnected, from herself and from us. We talked longer than we had in years. It wasn't magical. It wasn't fixed overnight. But it was honest. And honesty, I learned, is where healing begins. Some relationships don't end with betrayal. They end or survive, based on whether someone finally speaks the truth. Jenna didn't ruin my marriage. She saved me from losing myself. Sometimes the most dangerous moments aren't the ones where we make mistakes, but the ones that force us to finally face the truth we've been avoiding. If this story made you feel something, subscribe. Because the quiet moments matter more than we think.